So let me welcome you to the last session of this day. We're sort of between the BGD and the dinner, but we're extremely happy and I want to welcome very much the President of Kosovo, President Osmani. Thank you very much for being here. So the session is called Power, Principle, and Pragmatism, Leadership in a Fragmented Global Order. And I think we have an interesting panel, which I will introduce later. But we'll first have an address from the President on those issues, and then we'll join her on the panel and discuss things from various perspectives. President Osmani is a remarkable woman. She has been here last year, also at the BGD. She's also not only the president of Kosovo, she's also commander-in-chief of the Kosovo Security Forces. She holds a doctorate from Pittsburgh University, I think, in law, and that's very impressive. And she's one of the most influential voices for democracy and equality rooted in Euro-Atlantic roots. This is, of course, very relevant and very interesting. And returning to the BGD, she continues to inspire a new generation of leaders, female leaders in Europe, and we're very much welcome to see her here. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, and then we'll have a panel. Welcome, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Röller, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Berlin Global Dialogue for bringing us together again this year. We meet at a time when the idea of power is being discussed, but also when principle is being tested, and when pragmatism, not rhetoric, determines the credibility of leadership everywhere. As the world struggles with devastating and dangerous wars, not just here in Europe, but also all across different continents, as well as with disinformation and democratic backsliding, we are reminded every single day that the defense of principles is no longer theoretical, but is rather the front line of our time. True power today is not measured only in missiles or strong markets. It is also measured in credibility, and credibility comes from consistency in principle. For small states like mine, power is not built through domination, but through alliances, through trust, and through clarity in purpose. We believe that it is not the size of your territory that defines your relevance, but the moral strength behind your choices. You know, when NATO intervened in Kosovo in 1999, so about 26 years ago, it was not just the strength that mattered. It was the principle behind that power that saved lives. And it was a reminder that when democracies act together, they can bend the arc of history towards justice. Today, as we all stand firmly and unequivocally with Ukraine, we recall that solidarity among democracies is never outdated. Those who were once protected have a duty to protect in return and to stand on the right side of history. Democracy indeed remains the best thing that ever happened to humanity, not because it is flawless, of course not, but because it gives us the chance to correct our flaws. For countries like ours, democracy was not handed. It was earned, paid for by sacrifice and by the hope of a people fighting for it. We build our institutions not in comfort, but from the ashes of war, guided by the belief that freedom is always, always worth it. And today, that belief has translated into action. Kosovo contributes to NATO missions abroad, stands shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine through humanitarian security support, and has joined European partners in imposing sanctions against Russia. For a country born out of wars, standing up for peace is not a simple gesture. It's a duty, an everyday duty. In times of disinformation, war, and sometimes even fatigue, principle is not idealism. It is the last line of defense for leadership. Because values for us are not luxuries. They are strategic assets that sustain nations when everything else is uncertain. That is why Kosovo invests not only in defending our democracy at home, but also in contributing to shared global goals, from digital security to empowering women and youth across our region, including through the Women, Peace and Security agenda. But we understand very well that the world no longer runs on idealism alone. Pragmatism today means turning principle into policy and ideals into action in a rapidly changing world. It means knowing when to compromise on your methods, but never on your mission. Pragmatism is the wisdom to navigate reality without ever losing sight on what is right. We often speak of a world divided between regions, but the real divide today is between those who respect the rules and those who profit by breaking them. Because when rules are bent for one, they are broken for all. Those who refuse to choose between right and wrong end up being judged by history instead. And I believe that leadership is not about trying to predict the future, but it's about shaping it with conscience. That is why alliances built on principles are the ones that endure. Kosovo's story is a living evidence of that truth and proof that when the world acts on principle, even a small country's story can change the conscience of humanity. Power indeed matters, but it's principle that gives power its true meaning. Our alliances have saved lives because they were grounded in what is right, not just in what is possible. So, dear friends, I believe that principle and pragmatism are not opposites. They are the twin engines of leadership that lasts. So let me take a moment to put this into perspective. A truly merit-based enlargement of the European Union with the Western Balkans would be the clearest expression of principle turned into pragmatism. Such an approach is not merely a matter of fairness or values. It's a profoundly strategic choice for the European Union itself. By advancing enlargement on merit, the EU strengthens its own self. It deepens its security architecture, it enriches its human and economic capital, and it reinforces its geopolitical resilience. So it's a win-win. Take the example of Kosovo. Our young people bring innovation, talent, and a future-oriented energy that Europe needs to stay competitive and cohesive. Our resilience and principled stance against malign interference can contribute to a much-needed security shield for the entire continent, because having Kosovo in the EU family means having a partner that understands firsthand the risks that are posed by malign forces. We have faced them, we continue to successfully resist them, and we stand firmly on the side of shared democratic values. And security in the Western Balkans means security in every EU capital. A crisis or instability in any country in the Western Balkans does not remain confined within our borders. It reverberates across the region and the Union itself, as history has shown time and time again. Therefore, the merit-based integration of the Western Balkans is not a charity process. It's a strategic one. It's the clearest example that idealism and pragmatism can go very well hand in hand, that upholding principles can also serve European Union's most vital interests. Because in the end, it is not about how big your country is, it's about how big your purpose is. And if this century is to belong to freedom, it will be because democracies dared to work together, not just when it was easy, but especially when it was the hardest. So let this century prove that freedom endures not by chance, but by the courage of democracies that act closely together, in principle and with a clear purpose. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Now delighted to be shared by two other panelists. A quick reaction. I didn't know the speech in advance, and I think it's always very, very heartening to hear such a strong message for prosperity and pragmatism and democracy coming from smaller countries and from countries, if I may say, who haven't been like that for a very, very long time, are actually struggling also in their neighborhoods. So I think it's you know, a very positive message, which I like, but we'll have some more questions and possibilities to discuss it. Let me introduce, we have a diverse panel from a regional, so I want to look at it more from different regions of the world. And we have Kay Bailey Hutchinson here again this year. You were here also last year, which is very nice. Now, she's our American on this panel, let's say, and of course a very distinguished one. She was ambassador under Trump 1 to NATO from 17 to 21. So, you know, yes, so you were there at that time representing the United States in an interesting time, but it's become maybe even more interesting. And she's from Texas. So I actually studied in Texas, and she was a senator from Texas. I think there are 2 senators from Texas. And that you were from 93 until 2013. So for 20 years, if my math is correct, you were at Texas, and you've done many, many other things. So I think this is very pertinent to get a view from the United States on the theme of this sort of geopolitical prosperity, democracy. When you say principle and pragmatism and democracy works very well in the end, we hope that applies to all, and we're very much looking forward to your comments. And then we have somebody who is very happy to have here, Ebru Ozdemir, she's the chairman of a holding, one of the biggest holdings in Turkey. And actually you have some, you just told me, and as we were discussing, you have some business in Kosovo. But that's not why we invited you for this panel. It just works out nicely. So we're actually very careful in selecting. So it's a major conglomerate in construction energy. Energy is also something which I know you're very knowledgeable on, energy, cement, and also tourism. So we'd be very happy. And you hold an MBA from Fordham University from the United States. So we should all speak English, I guess. That's a good thing. So let me begin not with the President, Your Excellency, but as Kay Bailey. So, you know, having been Trump 1 at NATO, can you sort of enlighten us a little bit on how you see this and how you look maybe at the transatlantic relationship and also at Europe? We'll come to Europe later on. We've been discussing this in the conference for a long time, but what's your view on that? Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Lars. I appreciate being invited, and I think what you have started here is fabulous. I've been to the Munich Security Conference many, many times, and I think you're doing a different take for Germany, the economic, business, and policy, and how all of that comes together. So thank you for that. I also just want to take one moment to say that my colleague at NATO, Hans-Dieter Lucas, was the ambassador from Germany. He's here as well. He has only retired a month ago, and now he's back in Berlin, and we were great colleagues at NATO.
He was one of our best ambassadors, by the way, and then also ambassadors in France.
And then Italy.
And that's right, yes.
Yes, a great service to Germany to have someone of his...
Now he's retired.
Yes, barely retired, and he'll be a great asset for you and for all of Germany going forward. It was a different time in Trump 1, and Hans-Dieter and I worked so well together, which was, it was difficult, but also a very important time. I think it is very much more progressed now in the Trump 2, and I think the NATO summit was very positive, and I think while many people are put off by some of the mannerisms of President Trump talking to Europe, nevertheless, I see a positive result happening. here in Europe, Europeans coming together and becoming much more focused on not only defense, but our collective defense. And I can say absolutely with no hesitation, Americans appreciate NATO and appreciate our alliance with Europeans. Congress is overwhelmingly supportive of NATO and our mission and our transatlantic alliance. And I think that if we put aside differences on some of the issues, that this is what will survive. It will be a strong NATO with a stronger European element, and I think it will be good for all of our collective defense. The umbrella of security over Europe, the United States and Canada, and really our 44 partners at NATO is so important for us to stand together. Many people don't realize that NATO has 32 partners, the allies that have pledged under Article 5. But we have 44 partners that are very intent on wanting to be with us and wanting to contribute to us. And I am very optimistic about this. We will have bumps in the road. It's going to be difficult to have 5% of the defense spending, but 1.5% of that is really infrastructure improvement so that our defense is stronger.
So one debate, let me just abuse my position a little bit on the US administration. So one position is, of course, the US does whatever it does. There's very little control we have over that. We need to do our homeworks in Europe. This is a theme which we've been discussing many times. We had the commissioners here. We had the European Council yesterday, which made some progress on competitiveness. We passed a roadmap on defense. Commissioner Kubilius was here and talked about that. So we need to do our homeworks, and it was difficult enough. But if you think about what the United States position, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but do you think there's some positive effects? When I listened to her speech, I'm not so sure it would resonate in the current White House that much, but this is a question. But I think that, do you think it has positive effects on Europe also, the US position? Does it help? You're talking also about enlargement and unity and geopolitical things. Because a lot of people think Trump actually has some good things also, which will happen from it. Or maybe they will all be good, yes.
Well, it's going to be a road that is not smooth all the time.
Yeah.
But yes, I do think that the commitment of Europeans to doing more in defense and doing more together among Europe, but also with America and others, the Asia-Pacific partners that come to our summits now. I think we are looking at maintaining the freedom that all of us treasure, and that is the common theme. You talked about principle, and that is the common theme also. And I do not doubt that America has that principle and that goal. And I think it is also important to look at Congress. Congress is overwhelmingly supportive of NATO and of
but are they really imposing their role?
I think that's a valid statement, but
okay.
there's a lot of speaking of truth to power that you don't see.
Okay.
And that's for many reasons, but
we'll come back to
the Congress is so overwhelmingly supportive, you couldn't take that away.
Okay.
It's too strong.
Okay, very good. Well, by the way, I'll come to the floor also. I think there may be some questions on that. And so let me turn to Ebru from Turkey. I mean, Turkey, when I thought about this, is of course geopolitically becoming a very important country. You know, Middle East and other places. And of course, it's had a complicated relationship with Europe. And you're one of the successful businesswomen from Turkey. How do you see the role of Turkey, and how do you look at the geopolitical situation?
Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation, and it's great to be with the excellencies together with the strong women in this panel. As you say, we are not a member yet. I don't know how many years we are like on this
I think you're
trip.
a candidate for...
I don't know, more than 40 years, 50. Our ambassador is here, so he knows. Since we were kids. Even maybe before that, but at least we're in the customs union. But being in business,
right.
yeah, customs union is something that we achieved at least. And, you know, as in the business, I have to look from the pragmatic side. We are now the ambassadors, we are like trying to do at least a commercial diplomacy, at least trying to build bridges in business with Europe. As you said in the beginning, we are investors in Kosovo, maybe for the past 15 years. Kosovo is the youngest republic in Europe, and we built the airport. And you see, when you have the infrastructure, Kosovo is only 2 million, but we have 4 million passengers. So basically, as you said, we have a significant and ever-increasing role in Europe. And now we're also working on the energy, because energy security is becoming more and more important. With the Atlantic Council, we prepared a report this year. We launched in the UNGA week about energy security of the region. So basically, all the energy corridor is going from Turkey as well. And the other important thing is Syria now. I mean, Syria has to be rebuilt at one point. Turkey has 900 kilometers of border. And in the beginning, for the infrastructure, maybe at least $200 billion is needed. And I think there's going to be a cooperation again between European countries, with Turkey, to rebuild this country. So basically, I mean, we have to do some cooperation. And Turkey is a natural partner of Europe. And especially in the era of, trade and economics is now the most important issues. I think we have to join all the resources and the power to be a more complete, to create a more complete partnership in this region.
So you see Turkey clearly in the European future in Europe, basically.
I think so.
No
I mean,
doubt.
Europe needs us. For Turkey, Europe is our biggest trading partner. And you see it's now nearshoring. I mean, whatever we do, I think we are completing the European continent. And we do work in Europe. We started to work in Europe. And we see that we can do much more better. And also the third countries, I mean, in Africa. In the morning, there was a question about Africa. I mean, who's going to develop Africa? I think this partnership. So whatever we do from now on, I don't think anybody alone can achieve anything. So partnerships, de-risking, joining the talents is going to be the next era for partnerships to develop the prosperity, I think. I have to be pragmatic. I mean, we build bridges, literally. We build the longest span bridge in the world, in Turkey. And I think we have to build bridges. And this can only be done by understanding each other more and creating this kind of compassion between others. And we have to understand each other more.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good message. President Osmani, so basically, I think one thing you were mentioning is and I'm also very close to Prime Minister Edi Rama, who's also coming tonight, the Balkan being very important strategically for Europe. And there's a big debate about enlargement, which has to do with many different countries. It's also complicated in your neighborhood. But basically, just to challenge you a little bit, you said it's a strategic advantage for Europe to enlarge. There's a different theory which also says that we need to advance in certain areas in Europe. So we need a bit of it's very difficult, first of all, if you have too many, because it's very difficult to get to agreements. And there's a two-speed Europe, and therefore Europe should concentrate on its core. But I guess you're firmly, obviously, in the camp where Europe can benefit from you just as much as you can benefit from Europe, right?
I love being challenged, but perhaps
it's not a good challenge, right?
No, I meant the challenge that you just posed,
okay.
Challenging what I said. Perhaps on the comment that you made earlier on whether my speech on principles and pragmatism going together whether it resonates with Washington, D.C. or not, and the current administration. I would like to disagree. I think it does resonate very much, because I strongly believe that this administration has been keeping principles while at the same time working for an America that is safer, stronger, and more prosperous. What has changed, though, is the way how we have to present our competitive advantage in front of the US administration. So instead of just going to DC and asking for help, 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 we have to present it in a different way and explain why that help, why that support would also make America stronger, safer, and more prosperous. And I strongly believe that today, just like in the past, the mission remains the same, except that it's completely different methods that are used. As we've heard from President Trump, the way he's engaged with his peace through strength formula, it's ultimately about saving lives. And I think there's no more humane principle, there's no more mission that is more noble than saving lives. And he is being engaged in that. That is principled leadership. It's not just pragmatic leadership. But the methods that he uses to achieve that, to achieve saving lives, are pragmatic. He uses trade. He uses his, the way how he knows to do deals in order to convince leaders to deter. And deterrence, I think, has been one of the greatest strengths, because it's not just about reacting after conflicts are created. It's also about deterrence. And why does that make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous? When you have a safer Europe, when you have peace in Europe, there's also prosperity in Europe. When you don't have peace, you cannot talk about economic development, you cannot talk about investment, you cannot talk about competitive advantage. So I strongly believe that, if the speech in its entirety is heard, I think it would also resonate, and I've seen that resonating in my conversations with the new administration. So again, it's about a different method, but not about compromising on the mission, which has been, and you rightly pointed out, Madam Ambassador, with the presence of the US forces and other European forces, NATO, including Turkey in Kosovo, the world is showing that true commitment to principled leadership, while at the same time being pragmatic, because in that sense, you're contributing to peace and stability in the entire Western Balkans. Now, turning back to Europe and the second part of your question, you're saying Europe wants to focus on its core. Why aren't we considered Europe's core too? We are a nation that has contributed to defending the values, the European values, well before the EU existed. More than 500 years ago, we defended, as a nation, what was called the last port of Europe. Since then, it was in our very DNA to defend the values of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Just recently, according to Gallup International, Kosovo is the top 1 country in Europe in terms of safety, security, and the rule of law. Number 1 in Europe, number 3 in the world. Just recently, according to the Global Index on Investment, we are number 26 in the world, above most European capitals in terms of the low risk in investment. So I think there is an advantage to the European Union to include us too, and not to see us as a burden, but to see us as a potential. We offer the human potential, we offer the economic potential, but I think it's also a strategic imperative. The same way that the Union became stronger when the Baltic states, when Poland joined, and I guess you would agree that it made the Union stronger, that same way, if the Western Balkan countries that adhere to EU values and principles join, it would make the EU stronger and not weaker. You know, you already have a few countries that make the decision-making process difficult.
Absolutely.
But those are the countries that do not adhere to the very foundational values that the EU has been built on. We are a country that aligns with the European Union 100%. We're not asking for charity. We're asking to be seen for what we do, for how much we work, how much we complete our homework, but also what we offer to the European Union. And my final point on peace and security. A Western Balkans that loses its hope on enlargement is not a stable Western Balkans. We are just 4 hours away from Greece, another few hours away from Hungary, and from other European capitals. The lack of stability or destabilization is never isolated in our continent, as we have seen with the war in Ukraine. So investing in the Western Balkan, by investing in the Western Balkans and enlargement, I strongly believe the EU would be investing in its own peace, in its own security, and in this whole idea of a Europe whole, free, and at peace, which I believe was not just the dream of its founding fathers, but also it's the dream of the current generation.
Yeah, I agree with you, but why do you think it is so difficult and why does it take so long?
I think, and perhaps to go back to something President Trump always mentions, because there's just too many bureaucrats that have forgotten about what is this all about? Why was the EU founded? What does it stand for? Why does it exist? There needs to be true leadership that is shown within the European Union and make sure that it's not the bureaucrats that set the rules, because they're all about postponement after postponement, delay after delay, rather than getting things done. And I think there's so much that we can learn from the businesses that are present here at the Berlin Global Dialogue, and there should be more politicians coming here to learn and to listen, because the private sector, it's about getting things done.
Yes.
And it's about time that the EU bureaucrats learn a thing or two about how things are done, rather than how they can be more creative in putting obstacles. So far it's been about putting obstacles, and there needs to be a change. Of course, it takes member states, and hopefully Germany can play a leadership role here. But I do have a lot of hope on Chancellor Merz, because he is a doer rather than just empty talk and rhetoric. And I do hope that he will make sure that there are certain changes made in the decision-making processes with the European Union, so that it's leadership that triumphs over the empty talk and over the bureaucrats that have been blocking progress within the European Union.
Well, we have President von der Leyen here tomorrow, and her speech is about Europe and Europe's response in the global stage. I don't know whether you should touch on enlargement, but I think that is a big issue. And we'll see. We'll do that. Mrs. Hutchinson, so how do you look at this European? So you said already that Europe is actually benefiting and getting stronger and investing more in defense, and you think that is a good thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's also Trump's success.
Well, every American president that I have known and worked with, starting with President Clinton, all the way through Republicans and Democrats, believe that we will be stronger when Europe takes the defense part more seriously. And when I was at NATO, my colleagues from Europe told me they knew they needed to do more. And that's going to be good for Europe. It's going to be jobs and an economy in Europe, because there will be so much more investment in the building of our arsenals. So that's going to be good. But you know, the other thing that I think really, it kind of goes to what you said, that I think it's going to be really important for Europe going forward to look at energy as another avenue. We're talking defense building as a building of the economy, while we also have defense. But I don't see how we can confront the technological needs of the future to be able to create the AI that we will need to be competitive if we don't have reliable, affordable energy. And I think that's something that we could do together. And I don't think I see enough emphasis on that, because if we're going to have data centers and AI, we've got to have a lot more energy, and that's proven. We also have to be able to have secure communications and be able to handle AI when it could be an offensive maneuver. So we've got a lot that we can do together, and I hope that we can do that together with Europe, because our adversaries are the same. Our potential adversaries are autocratic systems that do not have human rights, that do not have a rule of law, that do not have free press. So we have to come together for doing what we can to take this incredibly complex defense posture that we have in the globe right now. And I think if we will put all of our assets together to determine how we can best deliver AI and have the energy to do that, you know, we can't do it with solar and wind. We have to do it with stable sources, including solar and wind, but also the other forms of energy, like nuclear, where we're doing more innovation, like new sources of hydrogen and other possibilities, and doing what we know produces energy in the most pristine, clean way, like natural gas is a natural transition for energy that will give reliable supply, and we can do it in a clean way. So we've got a lot in common, but we have also in common adversaries. So that's why we ought to be together, and we ought to be inclusive. And I think both of you are from countries that have not yet been accepted into the EU, and you should be. Both of you have so much to offer, both of your countries. The Western Europeans have been very creative, and you know, we have a lot to learn from Ukraine, speaking of technology and what they've done with the building of their own drones. So I think all of us together are going to be stronger.
Maybe we should add some, but also kick some out, maybe. But we can't really do that. That's an inappropriate comment. But I'd rather have you than.
Thanks. But I just want to add one thing to the Ambassador Kay. So it's not only the generation of energy; it's a transmission of energy. So there's also a bottleneck there. And trillions of dollars has to be invested there. This is the reason the collaboration and cooperation in the region is important. It's also not the transmission, but the number of electricity people who's going to do this whole transmission is around like 1 billion electricians we need in the world to be able to install this or to upgrade these transmission lines. So there's a lot of bottlenecks in that area as well, where we definitely have to cooperate. And Turkey is just, you know, in the middle of all these transition lines. And as you clearly stated, now the new technologies needed, like SMRs, the hydrogens, but still, it's going to take some time for these new technologies to be really fully operational. So we have to find ways of transmitting energy where there is to where there is not, like Kosovo. I mean, currently Kosovo is importing energy, where they have enormous amount of high-quality coal.
Energy is also a big issue for Kosovo, right?
As it should be, I would say, for every country, especially after the energy crisis that Europe faced. Everyone understood that energy is not just about economy, it's not about numbers, it's also foreign policy, it's also security. It's also about having a long-term vision for your country and your continent and beyond. But as Ebru rightly pointed out, we have the third largest reserve of coal in Europe and fourth or fifth in the world. That is quite a large reserve. Some of it is used. We have been quite dependable on coal historically, more than 90%. Now that is going down because we're also investing in wind and solar. But I would agree with you, if we're talking about energy security and how much energy and data centers we will need for the development of the AI, and to make sure that it's the Euro-Atlantic Alliance, the United States and Europe, that lead the AI development rather than leaving it to the malign powers, we need to make sure that enough energy is produced, and for that we will need to use the resources that we have. What we're looking at right now is making sure that the use of coal in Kosovo can be done through cleaner technologies. There are a lot of clean technologies that are out there, including some that we're discussing with a number of US businesses. Technology is advancing, and we need to find ways to protect the environment on one hand and the health of our citizens, while in the other we develop and have not just enough energy for ourselves, but also enough to export to neighbors and beyond if that is necessary. So right now, what is really helping us a lot is the compact program, the MCC compact that we have with the United States. It's more than $236 million of investment in battery storage. That will help us.
This is a U.S. government program or private?
It is a U.S. government program that was just kind of, the MCC was sort of dead, but then we reawaken it. So now it's back in Kosovo, at least for Kosovo. I don't know about other countries, but we're continuing the project.
And this was the current administration, or was it the Biden?
We're continuing it with the U.S. administration, yes. So the current Trump administration decided to continue this MCC project with Kosovo, but it's also focused on developing workforce, which is what Ebru mentioned, and that is extremely important in building capacities, as well as in strengthening the regulatory and institutional framework when it comes to energy. So yes, we're aggressively investing in renewables, but at the same time, we do understand that to meet the demands of both our country, but also to meet the strategic demands right now for our continent and beyond, we need to use the resources that we have in coal. And finally, I've been insisting that we should try to work with partners on SMRs. I think Kosovo is a country being a very reliable ally to both the United States and Europe. It's a country that can work with that as well. And according to our energy strategy, generally diversifying has been one of the key aspects. So I strongly believe that even the smaller countries can give a contribution in achieving the energy security that we need as a continent and beyond. But at the same time, investing in energy and investing in defense are two of the main factors that we should do, not just because we're asked to, but because it's in our own benefit. We're already spending more than 2% of our GDP, although we're not in NATO yet. And we're planning in a matter of this mandate to double that down. So we're going to be achieving 4% faster than some NATO member states. So I think that's a big argument to get Kosovo into NATO too, beyond the ones that I mentioned for the European Union. To be in NATO, as you know, Madam Ambassador, means to be safe. And in Kosovo, you have an army that has been entirely trained based on NATO standards, an army that is already serving shoulder to shoulder with the US soldiers in peacekeeping missions around the world. And we have niche capabilities, some of which, like search and rescue, are the best in Europe. So I think we can give a contribution too. So this is not just about asking for something, it's also about making the alliance stronger, safer, and more prosperous. So we can give our tiny but important contribution to the alliance too.
Before I go to the students, this might surprise my team. I asked that question. The session is also about leadership, and I used to work for a woman in Germany, the first women chancellor, and you're, obviously a very dynamic leader, a woman leader. Do you think women leaders in politics are different, more needed, or is it, or not?
I think you already know the answer to that question. Let me focus in two aspects. One, peace, and two, economy. If we simply look at statistics, we will see that, in modern history, whenever women were involved in peace negotiations, peace came faster and it lasted longer.
Is that a fact? Yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look at Kosovo. Women led the way in so much during our peaceful resistance, then they fought during the armed struggle Then they participated and led peace negotiations and now leading the country. And it's an embodiment of women, peace, and security working. But so peace is one. I'm not talking about, DEI. I'm talking about a merit-based process. Whenever women are at the table.
DEI. What is DEI?
Diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
So.
Shows. Yeah.
You're not watching enough U.S. television.
Yes. That's why they're so.
You should watch more U.S.
That's why they're
television.
surprised I'm even asking that question. Yes.
Okay. So it's definitely not about DEI. It's about a merit-based process, and it's about achieving peace faster, and it's about peace lasting longer. And peace is always a precondition to prosperity. Secondly, in economy, I think it's not just the right thing to do. It's about the smart thing to do. Leaving 50% of your workforce outside of your economy is never smart. So it's about giving your country a chance to succeed. And that chance is never, I think, wholesome unless you include women, again, based on merit, based on their hard work, and we've seen it in Kosovo. Trust me, I'm not the president because I'm a woman. I'm the president because I worked really hard. And as it has been...
And you're very successful, yeah.
And as it has been the case for all women in my country, most times they worked 10 times harder than men. So if you want to get the job done, it's about making sure that women who work hard are included. And I think the same criteria should apply to both men and women. And leadership of women has proven to be successful, I think, in most cases.
Okay, very, very good. Do you want to say something to that? Otherwise, I'll go to the student. I don't want to...
Well, all I will say is I'm sitting here in Germany, and I have to say that I
Sitting here
really
in Germany,
admired
yes.
Angela Merkel very much. I think she was an early leader.
She also worked very hard, by the way.
I didn't agree with everything she did. I'm not saying that. But she was a leader that knew instinctively, for instance, when how you could work to bring Germany together, East and West, and how, when we brought Germany into NATO, the East was still out, and yet it was worked out. She was a leader that was instrumental in keeping NATO together when there were fractions, and I saw her operate personally. I think she was extraordinary, and because I'm sitting here in Germany, I wanted to say.
I just want to add something, because I've known President Osmani since she took this post, and I've been following her around the world. And although Kosovo is a small country, I mean, she has been carrying this flag all over the world very successfully. I mean, she puts a lot of effort putting Kosovo in a very good position around the world, in US, in Turkey, around. So I have to congratulate her because, I really admire her. But I think the best thing that as women, what we do is we combine passion and compassion so that we make deals easily. And in today's complex world, it's easier to deal with women, and it's easier to negotiate with women because we have the empathy. And I'm very happy to be in this table because I'm an engineer. I'm the only one in the table. So thanks to you for putting us around the table.
Yeah, I'm the only man. Okay, almost running out of time. Let's go to the floor, and maybe we start with the student. I have 3 questions here, and I can choose. So I choose the one from Ima Esyan from Berkeley, Haas School. Is that person here? Maybe that person is not here.
Maybe here.
Oh, there. Please go ahead. Ask your question.
Hi. Because you've chosen this question, and I think it's more personal. Hi, I'm Ima from UC Berkeley. I'll go with the question of when values and interests conflict, what principle guides you, and what practical steps guide your decision-making?
So when you have you would argue you would not have a conflict between values and interests, right? I don't know whether. So the question is, values and interests sometimes conflict?
For me, it's the fairness. I mean, whatever decision I make, it has to be fair for both sides. And it has to create a win-win situation. Because if you don't create any win-win situation, that deal will not last at all.
I would agree with Ebru and perhaps just add, think long term. Sometimes you might see that collision with interest can create a problem for the moment, and it's very, very difficult, and you have to pay a very high political cost for the moment. But then long term, there's a lot of return in that investment. So I would say just try not to be short-sighted in those moments, but think long term. And it's, again, despite of what you said, I would agree. Just stand with your principles. Long term, it's always the right thing to do.
Well, I didn't dispute.
You didn't disagree. You just challenged me.
Yeah, that's my job. Here to do a little bit of that. Maybe. Sorry. Was there a follow-up? I think there's a follow-up.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I wanted to specifically hear from the ambassador what her response is, just because I feel like trust hasn't been established in the Global South, just because there have been instances where, for instance, sovereignty wasn't equally defended across the world, specifically in the Global South context and in the Middle East as well. So my question really is, how can you strengthen the trust in these principles so they're universally applied?
I think trust is another question that we haven't talked about and is so very important. A strong leader needs to be trusted by your allies and feared by your enemies. And I think sometimes our leaders have not, they've done one but not the other. And I think if a leader takes a position and then something happens that they've laid down an ultimatum, you have to then do what you said you would do. I mean, and in this, President Trump, with the Middle East, with Iran, Iran had been not allowing the IAEA inspectors in to see if they were in fact getting to the stage of a nuclear weapon. They had been doing that for years. We had a lot of politicians talk about it and keep saying, you've got to come into compliance, you've got to let them in. They didn't do it. And on the good side, President Trump said, we're going to give you this time, and if you haven't let the inspectors in by that time, we're going to take it out. And then he did exactly what he said. I think that is the mark of a leader doing the right thing. Now, that doesn't always happen. And I disagree with some of the things that President Trump has done in other areas. I want to be doing more for Ukraine. I think it is not just Ukraine. It's not just Europe. It is for our adversaries to know that we're not going to lose focus. We're not going to say, as we did when Putin went into Georgia or Crimea, oh, that was terrible, and then we have 15 minutes of talking about it and walk away. We cannot do that if we are a real leader and if we are going to have a deterrence. So I think we should be doing more to show that we're not going to walk away from Ukraine. And I think it's important that we show Putin, Europe, and the United States, this is the line. And if you cross it, we are going to react. And I don't think we can cower. I don't think we can say, oh, well, we don't want to escalate. We have to be transparent, and we have to be a leader. So when you talk about trust, I think trust is very important for a leader, and I think that's, again, where Europe and America need to do more with Ukraine. And I think the president did the right thing on Iran, and I think we just have to judge each incident, and we may disagree on that, but trust is important for allies, and it's important for adversaries to know that when we say something, we're going to do it.
Yeah, we don't want to get into fundamental discussion, but I think that trust and policy and long run and relationships and principles are very important in personal life, but also in politics, and I think it's also true in business. So I like your message very much, and it's great to hear that, and it's great to have a leader, a European leader who supports that. When it comes to some countries around the world, I'm not sure you have that, but that's my personal view. But there are still things at this point, it's unclear what will happen. So, we have a peace agreement in the Middle East. We have a difficult situation in the Ukraine. And I didn't talk to him, but I sat next to my boss talking to Putin many, many times. And I know how he acts and I know how he talks. And so let's see, let's see what happens. And I also think that even if you have some successes in some places, you're a diplomatic successes in some regions of the world where you have a lot of power and influence. And that doesn't apply necessarily in other parts of the world where you need a more diplomatic approach and you're dealing more with countries which are of the same size. I think still you need trust. And you need also trust with your friends. And I think what is, and look, I don't want to judge this because I don't think, no, that's not going to happen, but what is going to happen, I don't know that. But I think trust is a very important one. And trust you build by reliability, by consistency, by predictability, by what she was saying. And I'm worried that that's not what's likely to happen. Do you know what I mean, President? Okay.
Well, I know what you're saying. We all know what you're saying, and it's valid. It's valid. We've got to rebuild that trust, and it's not just this administration, but it is this administration, but it was the previous one. The leaving Afghanistan was a disastrous decision. And it was not what a strong alliance would do.
Yeah, but it doesn't help when you say the others are worse than I agree with you. I think,
You're absolutely
so
right. But we have to rebuild that trust for our alliance to be ready for the adversaries of the future with the kind of warfare that is available out there. We've got to rebuild the trust.
I agree with that.
And the United States, the transatlantic bond is essential for all of our future.
So power, principle, pragmatism, leadership, I think is what it's really all about. It's a very broad panel here, but I think this is very important. Maybe some final words from the president, and then we'll go for dinner. Unless you guys want to come in. We'll give the last word to the president.
Thank you. Perhaps to close on what you all mentioned, trust is the most important ingredient. The most important ingredient, whether in life, in politics, or in business. And when you can rely on your partners, when you can rely on your allies, that shows our true strength. Our true power has always lied in our partnerships, on partnering with one another. You mentioned Afghanistan. When Afghanistan happened, the United States needed a country to rely on with the Afghan evacuees. They called me, and in 15 minutes I said, yes, we will receive the Afghan evacuees because we want to help the United States. Yes, Kosovo was the country that received Afghan evacuees, both groups that came through the United States as well as groups that came through NATO. We did it for two reasons. Once, because we wanted to give back. When we were refugees, 2/3 of the people of Kosovo became refugees. You opened your hearts, your doors, and your minds to the people of Kosovo, and you saved our lives. And now it was our time to give back. But secondly, because we wanted to show our reliability as a partner, and we showed trust. And you trusted in us. The United States trusted us to carry that important project, but also it was a mutual trust. And despite, again, Kosovo being a small country, the strength of the alliance was big. The impact of a country should not be determined by its size alone, as I said initially in my speech, but also in the credibility that it builds through consistency. Yes. And I would agree with what was said, and I think we need to show that same credibility of our alliance and the strength of our alliance when we support Ukraine, when we support each other, obviously, because no matter how big the country is, no matter how strong you are as a person, you always need friends.
That's true, yes. Thank you very much for that. Thank also Ambassador Hutchinson, Ebru, Ozdemir, and the President. The first gentleman is also here, I should say, that I need some support here, I guess. And that closes this day. Tomorrow we have Ursula von der Leyen, President von der Leyen here, and we'll continue the discussion. Let's enjoy the dinner and see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Very much. Nice
Very good.
To meet you.